The news soon spread around the town that the king's son was gone forever, and all the people wept and cried, for he was a popular prince, and besides, it was risky if you were not seen to join in the general grieving. So much for the people who were left behind on the ground. But the prince soared on through the sky, the wind rushing through the air. At first he felt the damp cold of the clouds, but as he drew closer to the sun, he began to feel its heat. "Surely the sage set me on a course to burn me up," he said to himself. "He wished to destroy me because I opposed his marriage to my sister and I openly questioned his wisdom. But I am not dead yet. There is no majesty and there is no might greater than Allah the Glorious. If He is willing, I shall discover how to bring this machine to land." And he felt under the mane and found another pin. He could not be quite sure what would happen if he turned it. Perhaps the horse would turn a somersault and tip him to his death. There was trepidation in his heart as he tried it. But lo! The flying horse ceased its ascent and began to level off. For the next hour the prince experimented with the controls, making his horse climb and descend, and turn this way and that. Soon he was master of the machine. On he flew through the sky, now able to enjoy the scenery below, the lakes and the mountains, the cities, and the dark forests, the fields and the dusty plains. He did not know where he was going, but in fact, he was over the kingdom of Bengal. Eventually he saw a thriving town and a magnificent palace with lofty towers and battlements. He thought to himself, "That is where I shall come down to land, for it is plain for all to see that I am of royal birth, and this is the place where I shall receive a royal reception." After nightfall, like a weary bird, he gently landed on the flat roof of the palace. He dismounted saying, "Praise be to Allah." He went around his horse examining it closely in the moonlight, and saying, "Whoever perfected this was a cunning craftsman, it shall yet return me home safely. But now my hunger is great. I shall explore the palace and see what can be found there." He dropped down through a skylight, and crept through the sleeping palace. He wandered through corridors, until he found a staircase. At the bottom of the stairs he found himself in a white marble courtyard in which a fountain played its lovely music. He bathed his hot face and hands and quenched his thirst. Now feeling stronger, he looked around at the various entrances and picked one door at random. He crept silently through the entrance, stepping over the leg of a sleeping guard. A sword drooped down by the side of the slave. Ever so carefully, the prince drew it from its saber before fixing it in his belt at his own side. By the light of a candle, he could see that he had chanced upon the harem. The floor was strewn with the forms of sleeping women. In the midst of them all stood a wooden and intricately carved bed, inlaid with pearls, with heavy curtains all around it. The prince drew the curtain and saw a sleeping face as beautiful as the light of the moon, with a flower-white forehead, shining hair, cheeks like blood-red anemones, and dainty dimples. He was amazed by her loveliness and grace. He knew that he was in imminent danger, but he no longer feared death. All his nerves were trembling as he kissed her lovely cheek. If she awoke in fright and screamed for the guards, he would surely be cut to pieces. He did not care. She opened her eyes and seeing the prince said, "You must be the one who came yesterday and asked for my hand in marriage. My father rejected you and told me that you were ugly and uncouth. Now I see that he deceived me, for your face is as glorious as the morning sunday." He did not deny what she said, and they fell into talking. There was an instant sympathy between their young hearts, and they knew that they were destined to love one another. But one of the waiting women heard their talk in her sleep. She awoke, and seeing a man in the room, she ran out to wake the guard. He was confused to find himself without a sword, and filled with fright when he realized that he had allowed a strange man to slip into the chamber of the princess. Seeing that the prince was armed and clearly of noble birth, he ran off to wake the king and beg for mercy. The king awoke from his slumber, took a curved sword called a scimitar, and rushed with the guard to the chamber of the princess. He meant to cut the intruder to pieces, but seeing that the prince was armed and looked not only noble, but clearly warlike and in the full strength of youth as opposed to his own flabbiness of middle age, the king put down his sword and said, "Who are you, rogue, who dares to creep into the room of the princess?" And the prince replied, "Who are you who dares call me rogue, when I am prince of a mighty kingdom that could crush yours as easily as an ant beneath the foot of an elephant? If I was not so careful for the honor and the feelings of your daughter, I would slice you up with this sword." And the king replied, "Even if you are the prince of a mighty kingdom, as you claim, all I need do is call for my guards and you will be mincemeat in an instant." "And where would the honor be in that?" replied the prince. "If you strike me down like a common criminal, O Lord, your kingdom shall be crushed beneath the boots of my father's foot soldiers. But hear my proposal, for there is a better way. In the morning, bring forth your finest soldiers and I will face them alone, and if the Lord Almighty is willing, I shall confound them. At least we shall provide a sporting spectacle for all the members of your household, and everyone shall see what manner of a man has entered your house, no thief or rogue, but the son of kings. Whatever the outcome, everyone's honor shall be served." The king saw the wisdom in this plan. He could see that the young man was of high birth, and it would no doubt be wiser and more seemly to grant him a death with honor. He called for the slaves to show their guest to a room, and to prepare food and drink for him, no doubt his last meal on the face of this earth. It was only a few short hours until the rays of the sun awoke the sleeping palace, and the king ordered his guards to get ready for battle against the prince. The prince arose early ready to meet his fate, but here, Scheherazade ceased her story, for dawn's light was also creeping into the chamber where she was telling it. "Now, my lord," she said, "if in your wisdom you will spare my life, I shall relate what happened next in the evening," and the great sultan, who was indeed eager to learn how the story continued, agreed that his beautiful narrator could live another day. And that was the first part of the story of the enchanted horse. I do hope that you are as keen as the sultan to learn the fate of the young prince, his princess, and the flying horse. Your own channel Diary of Stories. Thanks for support.